Welcome, everyone, to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. On today's episode, we'll be picking each and every men's quarterfinal at Wimbledon 2024, going through each one in depth. And since I haven't covered any of the fourth round matches, talk a little about those, work that stuff in, set the context of the paths that each player has taken to reach the quarterfinal stage, and what has that path told us about where they're at, where their games are at, heading into these massive last 8 matches. One reminder before I begin going through these quarterfinals, my newsletter, The Draw, which is a weekly curation of the best tennis content on the internet delivered straight to your inbox. It comes out every Tuesday morning, which as of recording is tomorrow morning. Link is in the description to subscribe to The Draw. We're going to go in reverse order. So the first quarterfinals to be played, that'll be the second half of the video. The second quarterfinals to be played 2 days from now, that'll be the first half of this video. So let us begin with Alex de Minaur taking on Novak Djokovic. De Minaur's path has seen Duckworth, Minaur, a withdrawal would have been against Lucas Pouille, and Arthur Fils was his fourth round match. The Fils match I watched in its entirety. De Minaur has probably had the easiest path to the quarterfinals out of anyone. But it was a high-quality match versus Fils, where ultimately de Minaur was just too solid from the back of the court. He kept the ball low on Fis's forehand, which Arthur struggled with. He kept the ball deep onto Fis's backhand, which is important against Arthur because he does have a really good aggressive two-hander if you drop the ball short to that wing. And essentially, I thought that de Minaur was, by his standards, especially this year, he played a pretty conservative and consistent style, and Fils was usually the first to miss. He hits big, he moves well, Arthur Fils, but he's just not steady enough as of now to compete with de Minaur. He did go God mode for about 6 games, and he ended up coming back to win the third set, but then started the fourth. It was kind of back to your regularly scheduled programming, and de Minaur was too good. Now, the other part of this match that I thought was more significant than anything I just said was what happened on match point, where de Minaur hit a stretch forehand low volley and won the match with this volley. But his reaction was not one of celebration, it was one of horror. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. And then he sat down, he looked at his team, he kept looking at his team, he shook his head. It was very clear at that point that de Minaur, his thought when he hit that match-winning volley was not, oh yay, I won the match. It was, oh no, did I just lose my next match because of, whatever he may have injured. It was not obvious. I saw some people comment on the social medias that perhaps it was an ankle, but frankly, I'm not seeing any ankle whatsoever when I reviewed the tape. I would think it is either a lower back or a hamstring based on the movement that I saw. But I don't know, because de Minaur is trying to play it close to the vest. And even in his post-match press conference, he played it off. He said, I'll be fine. I'll be okay. But the look in his eyes, I will not forget that. That was concerning after that match-winning volley. Djokovic has gone through Kopriva, Fernley, Popyrin, and Rune. All in all, particularly in his last 2 matches against Popyrin and Holger, Novak has been an offensive menace, and that is how he has taken pressure off of his movement. Now, it is true that against Popyrin and Rune, Djokovic has been moving a little bit more freely, and against Holger for the first time, I did see him make some very violent digs into the corners where he really went in hard and got into a very agile position and slid into defensive shots. So it's the first time I even saw him do that on a volley. First time I've seen Novak do that. Good to see. Very positive signs. But at the end of the day, that's not what he has relied on in the last 2 matches. His in-attack percentage against Rune was 33%. That is an enormous number. That is a whole 1/3 of the match. It is Djokovic in attacking positions And just to give you an idea, let me tell you what the rest of the breakdown was. So 33% Djokovic in attack, 48% neutral, and only 19% Rune in attack. His spot serving, that's where it starts. It's been elite, highest level possible. And I will absolutely beg you not to get fooled by the radar gun when it comes to Djokovic's serve, because even though you're not seeing crazy numbers in the miles per hour category, it is a scary weapon with the way he places his first serve on this surface in particular, which is going to give you that nice skid through the court. So putting it in the right spot is of paramount importance, and Djokovic does that. Every short ball against Rune was met with a precise approach and clinical volleying. And he's taking the ball early from the baseline. He's hitting pretty big. He's redirecting down the line at an extremely high rate. So it is an offensive cocktail for Djokovic that Alexei Popyrin certainly couldn't handle, and that Holger Rune certainly couldn't handle for kind of different reasons than Popyrin. Now, Popyrin doesn't return serve all that well. He doesn't move all that well. Rune, he does move really well. So what was Holger's problem? I do want to talk about this, even though it has nothing to do with the quarterfinal preview. I figure it is of interest. Rune is not applying any pressure on his rally balls. And therefore, he's either being attacked or he looks to attack, but in doing so, he hasn't worked the point in a way that has earned a high percentage opportunity. So these attacks become risky net approaches where he doesn't have a huge advantage, or he's asking his forehand to create from a position that his forehand can't really reliably generate offense from. That's what's going on. So what it should look like is you apply pressure, you earn an attacking opportunity, and then you take your aggressive swings. What do I mean by pressure? How do you apply pressure when you're rallying? There needs to be some quality on your rally ball. It has to have something, and it doesn't need to be everything. It doesn't need to have everything. And obviously your rally ball, the most important thing is that it should be a consistent and repeatable shot, but it's got to have some depth or maybe some width or some height, whether it stays low or it jumps up high, or maybe some pace on the ball. Something that makes it unattackable. And Rune in this match, when he was trading, when he was going into consistent mode, he was just kind of massaging the ball into the middle of the court. And it was bouncing at a comfortable height for Djokovic to strike. There was often not enough depth on the ball. It was often in the middle of the court. I mean, there just wasn't anything on these balls, and he was allowing Djokovic to play on the front foot, which kind of contributed to the 33% thing. And then, when Holger did try to attack, well, he was 7 for 18, net points won, a terrible percentage. I don't think he volleyed horribly. I think he didn't create the opportunities to come forward. I thought when he was coming forward, he hadn't put Djokovic under enough duress or knocked him off balance. So Novak was hitting good passing shots. That's why he was 7 for 18 at the net. It's not a volley problem. It's a point construction problem. And he also misses the forehand a lot when he asks a lot of it. So he made 14 forehand unforced errors. Novak made 7 forehand unforced errors. And who was more aggressive off that wing more consistently? Actually, Djokovic was. So more potency, half the number of errors for Djokovic. Forehand to forehand was a big advantage for Novak. There's also a big return thing. I talked about Djokovic's spot serving, but it did absolutely dominate Rune for large swaths of the match. And one of the things that I'm hammering home with Holger is this break percentage. He has, in the last 52 weeks, the second lowest break rate out of anyone in the top 50. Only Talon Griekspoor, and this is after Chris Eubanks left the top 50. Only Talon Griekspoor has a lower break rate than Novak Djokovic. Than Holger Rune in the top 50. Only Talon Griekspoor is lower. That is insane for a guy with Rune's ability. And I believe there is a pretty big return of serve issue with Holger at the moment. Okay, so that brings us back to Djokovic, de Minaur. The head-to-head is 2-1. Djokovic beat de Minaur down at the Australian Open in 2023. Fourth round match, total blowout city. This year they've played twice, so all three of the meetings have been in the last 2 years. De Minaur got the win over Djokovic at the United Cup. A win for Alex that's a lot less surprising in hindsight. If you just look at all of the struggles that Novak was dealing with early in the year in January, and I know he did fight his way to the Australian Open semifinal, but it really wasn't all that pretty on the way there, especially early on at the Australian Open. Meanwhile, de Minaur really is a different player in 2024. And we didn't really know that in January, but now we do. So that result in hindsight makes a lot more sense when it comes to their respective levels. Monte Carlo, Djokovic got the win. That was also this year. So that's the 2-1 head-to-head. I think this comes down to de Minaur asking some questions of Novak Djokovic that haven't been asked of him yet. Demon covers the court way better than Popyrin. Alex is also much harder to attack than Rune. His ball stays very low on the grass because of the flat trajectory, and de Minaur's depth control, especially on his backhand cross court, is really, really exceptional. I mean, just if you pay attention to de Minaur in a baseline rally and you focus on his depth of shot, it is actually stunning, kind of like Djokovic. So the result of that, with the speed and the better tradings, Djokovic is going to be made to play more balls, to run more. And I think the physicality and the ability to win neutral baseline rallies on a more consistent basis against a player who thrives in that situation, that's going to be a new question. I don't think anyone has really posed that question to Djokovic like de Minaur will. Now, Roof Open would help Alex. And I want to mention that as well, just to kind of blunt a little bit of the aggression from Djokovic, make it harder for him to be super precise and win a lot of quick points. And that's kind of where I'm going to go on the Novak side of things, because I think that de Minaur is another guy who Djokovic can really dominate in the serve-return dynamic. Remember why de Minaur has had more success this year? Because he's always been really fit, one of the fastest movers, someone who doesn't miss all that much. It's always been true about de Minaur, but he has been better this year because he's been able to dominate more. He's been able to just kind of achieve a little bit of a more aggressive mindset, up the miles per hour on serve, up the ground stroke MPH a little bit, but also attack, be more willing to attack and come forward, be more willing to change direction down the line with aggression. So that's what de Minaur wants. That's how he's had success. But I question his ability to hang with Novak in the serve-return dynamic, which would put de Minaur in more defensive positions. Djokovic is winning so many serve plus 1 points, and he's playing so aggressive on return, which is putting the points on his terms right away. And against a server like de Minaur, I think it's possible for Djokovic to do that, just like he did that against Holger against his second serve on a pretty consistent basis. So, Alex needs to dictate, in my opinion, in order to have success here, and I question his ability to dictate enough. I think it's going to be Djokovic in charge. And from a health standpoint, I am more concerned about de Minaur because of that match point than I am about Djokovic and the knee, as the knee continues to progress and look better and better and better. I'm more concerned about de Minaur. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get him at 100% and we don't get news of, especially hopefully we don't get news of a withdrawal soon, which would be terrible for the tournament and terrible for this podcast. My pick is my pick is Djokovic in 3. All right. Musetti versus Fritz, the second semifinal on this bottom half of the draw, which is frankly shaped up quite nicely for Djokovic, especially if de Minaur has health issues. Musetti has beaten Lestien, Darderi, Comasagna, and Pechi Perikar. If you're going to argue with my statement that de Minaur has had the easiest path to the quarterfinals, you are probably raising me Lorenzo Musetti, and you're saying, actually, Gill, Musetti's was easier, which on paper, that comes down to who do you think's harder to beat, Fils or Pechi Perikar? And I don't know. That's kind of a toss-up. So Musetti's been less efficient than de Minaur. That's one difference. So Musetti has dropped at least a set in every match he's played. Against GMP today, he really did show how difficult he is to hit through on grass. The block return is high quality. The movement is great. The errors are staying down. And Pechi Perikar just was asked to play too many balls on serve. The volley skills weren't quite clinical enough, weren't quite reliable enough just to stay buttoned up against Musetti. But the big key was Lorenzo was making balls back in the court at a rate in which Pechi Perikar hadn't seen before. Taylor Fritz's path has included O'Connell, Rinderknecht, Tabilo, and Zverev. Taylor Fritz coming back from 2-0 down today to beat Alexander Zverev. Fritz has always played Zverev tough. I've highlighted this many times. I actually picked Fritz to beat Zverev in my Rome preview and predictions, which didn't play out. Zverev won that match against Fritz and then won the Rome title. But usually it's been Alex's movement that's been the main separator, the main difference maker in that matchup, at least in the cases in which Zverev has actually won the matches. Today, unfortunately, as soon as this match started, it was very clear that Zverev was playing injured and that he wasn't at full speed. I think he actually started the match maybe at 50% speed, 50% capacity, and by the end of the match, he was moving better. He was up at like maybe 75% speed, but with less than 100%, if you're Taylor Fritz, you got to get it done, and ultimately, eventually, he did. And I know what you're thinking. What are you talking about? Are you telling me with a straight face that when Zverev wasn't moving as well, he went up 2-0, and then once he started moving better, that's when Fritz came back and beat him? Yes, I am telling you that. Yes, I am. First two sets, Fritz had a ton of trouble freeing himself up to attack in big spots. And he also struggled with Zverev's serve as Taylor was trying to take returns earlier, which is a strategy that backfired. And, you know, Zverev, not only was he serving great, he was hitting the ball beautifully, ultra aggressive off of both wings. And with Fritz just not really able to create any width in these baseline rallies, Taylor was beating him to the punch. Zverev was beating Taylor to the punch every single time, and Zverev wasn't being asked to play any defense. So one break of serve in the first set, really poor tiebreak by Fritz in the second set. Taylor was holding really easily for the vast majority of the opening two sets, but he still found himself down 2-0 against Zverev, who again was able to win without his movement. But as soon as Fritz kind of got the first break in this match, he relaxed and he started to create angles and hit with much more conviction off of his forehand and use his drop shot, which was really effective because, interestingly enough, it was actually the straight line speed for Zverev that perhaps looked the weakest as far as his movement is concerned. He was okay when he just had to take those kind of smaller shuffle steps to the ball. He was not good when he really had to go to full tilt and start to kind of get those legs churning and really build up speed. That's where he really struggled. So drop shot was there for Fritz, and Taylor moved back and he started to time some returns. And actually, by the end of the match, he was returning Zverev's serve pretty darn well. So that's my breakdown of that. That's kind of the only notable thing I have to say about Fritz's run. I didn't have all that much until today against Zverev. Head-to-head between Fritz and Musetti, 2-1 Fritz. First meeting was Wimbledon 2022. Taylor won that one in straights. Latest meeting was this year in Monte Carlo, where Musetti got the win 6-4, 6-4. This is a head-to-head, in my opinion, very tough to read into. Musetti in 2022 was ranked 56 spots lower than Fritz when they played at Wimbledon. That tells you where they were at in their respective careers. Doesn't tell you much. Monte Carlo, that was this year. But historically speaking, Monte Carlo is the toughest place in the world to beat Lorenzo Musetti. So the fact that Fritz couldn't get the better of him there, I don't know that it means much for what we're going to see here. What I want to do here is give arguments for both players. The argument for Musetti is that he is extremely difficult to finish against. He extends points with his movement and his defensive skills. That includes block returns. That includes slice defense. That includes powerful counterattacks from deep in the court. I think Musetti's ground stroke speeds are, and his strength on the run, very underrated. So he's able to counterattack. Fritz, on the other hand, can struggle to finish at times because he doesn't transition forward and volley well. So he gets stuck on the baseline, and if his linear power game isn't really finding a way through the court, we've seen him have this issue against Djokovic in the past, for example, Taylor can get a little bit lost offensively. The other thing is Fritz makes a lot of his dough winning the backhand and backhand exchange. I think the Musetti slice is going to disrupt that. I don't think Taylor in the past has always looked all that comfortable against players who have excellent backhand slices that they're able to use against him. Fritz does not have a comfortable backhand slice of his own, so he really looks to drive the ball regardless of the height of contact. And then he has to kind of lift up on the ball, and he doesn't get that nice, penetrating, flat backhand into play that he normally does. One of the wild cards here is nerves. So the winner of this match makes their first major semifinal. And whenever you have a situation like this, usually you have a match that features tension. Sometimes the quality isn't the highest. So I have to ask myself, well, first of all, I'm worried about both, but I have to ask myself, who is more likely to handle this moment better? And this is where, got to do a little armchair psychology here. I do think there's a pretty big difference between Musetti and Fritz, and I think this part favors Musetti. Musetti seems really happy to be here. Like, I'm pretty sure the guy has fallen on his back like he just won Wimbledon after every single match on this run. He kind of said as much, like in his interview in the fourth round, about just how incredible he felt. Like being a Wimbledon quarterfinalist, it's like a wow, I made it moment for Lorenzo Musetti. Like I don't think it's Chris Eubanks level like last year. 2 Eubanks mentions on this podcast, that the overhit on that. But I do think it's a fairly like, okay, I got nothing to lose because I did it. I think that's where Musetti is at right here. It's his first, Wimbledon quarterfinal, obviously. Fritz is a guy who tends to put more pressure on himself in general, and this is his 4th major quarterfinal coming up, and he's never gotten over this hump. So if you're asking me who's going to play with more freedom, Musetti, who's happy to be there, or Fritz, who's been there 3 times, never won it, and tends to be pretty hard on himself, I think Musetti is going to play with more freedom. Now, the arguments for Fritz, Taylor's serve has been outstanding. He is, without a doubt, going to win more easy points than Musetti. Musetti won't be able to make up for it in his return skill, I don't think. He won't be able to match Taylor in the free points battle. And when you have a situation like that, where Fritz is going to outserve Musetti and his return is good enough that it won't be able to make up the difference. If it's 50-50 from the baseline, there's a good argument that Taylor will have the edge. Musetti, the other thing is he can get a little bit passive, and Fritz will definitely find himself in plenty of attacking positions in this match. So if Taylor can unload on forehands, and this is where I think you separate Fritz on a bad day, an average day, and a good day. On a good day, Fritz's forehand is one of the better forehand weapons in the world. On an average day, he's just not quite finding the courage to really go after it. If Fritz has that good forehand day, he's unloading off of that wing, he's pinpointing his backhands like he usually does, perhaps that's enough. Perhaps Musetti's defense will not hold up to Taylor Fritz's relentless, kind of more linear baseline power game. Maybe. My prediction, I'm calling the upset here. I think Musetti's defense does stand up to what Taylor Fritz brings to the table. I think the mental thing does end up playing a role here. I think the backhand slice is a big edge for Musetti. I like the way Lorenzo is moving on this grass. And the reality is, I think Fritz is a slightly better grass court player than Musetti in general, but this to me is a bad matchup for Fritz because of Musetti's defense and his variety. So I am going to go with Lorenzo Musetti winning in 5 sets. Let's move on now to Alcaraz versus Tommy Paul. We've moved to the top half of the draw. Alcaraz has taken out Leal, Vukic, Tiafoe, and Humbert. Low-key, it's been a tricky path for Alcaraz. On paper, maybe not so much, but he's had to deal with some pretty venomous aggression in his last 2 matches, and there have been some lapses in concentration in most of his matches, but he's been exceptionally clutch. And a great example of that, I did the post-match analysis of his match against Tiafoe, but against Humbert, you had a similar thing where first 2 sets, Alcaraz was the better player, no questions asked. Humbert started to really see his return of serve well in the 3rd set. He was jumping on Alcaraz. He was hammering and punishing Alcaraz's serve. He was disrespecting Alcaraz's serve. And of course, I mean that in the best possible way. And in the 4th set, a lot of that continued. And Humbert was hitting the ball so clean. He takes it early. He's a truly dangerous player from the back of the court, especially when you're not able to put him on the run. It looked like we might be going 5 with the way Humbert was playing. From 4-5, 30-15 in the 4th set, Alcaraz is serving at 4-5, 30-15. He goes God mode for the next 7 points. And I say 7 points. He lost one of the points with the forehand error. But the other 6, you're looking at it, and it's like he's doing something great in each and every one. Let me go through it real quick, okay? It starts with the banana forehand pass from an impossibly low contact point. Next point is a defensive scramble where there's a couple of really good gets there and Humbert ends up making an unforced error. Next point is a backhand defense neutralization, open stance cross court, followed by a forehand drop shot winner on the next shot. 2 swings of the racket. He turns defense into offense. Next point is a stifling deep return, followed by a bone-crushing forehand winner. Next point is a desperation defensive lob that landed deep in the court and led to a missed overhead by Humbert. And the next point was a forehand, a running forehand that landed so deep in the court, it landed smack on the baseline right at Humbert's feet for a winner because Hugo found himself moving up a little bit too far. He was a little too far up in the court, and he couldn't handle the depth on Alcaraz's shot. That stretch of points, that's what we've been seeing for Alcaraz. Just in big moments, turn it on. He was able to do that again against Humbert. Tommy Paul, his path, Martinez, Virtanen, Bublik, and RBA. The match that is memorable here was the Virtanen match. It was a great match. Otto was playing awesome. Tommy almost lost it, but I don't think Tommy played bad. I just think it was a great match. Bublik didn't have it at all. Bublik was terrible. And RBA in this 4th round match, that was just a really nice draw for Tommy. Paul played very well, but it was a very good draw for a 4th round match. Paul's hot, though. He has won 8 sets in a row. He has won 9 matches in a row, dating back to Queens. Fritz, I didn't mention. He's also on a hot streak because of Eastbourne. This head-to-head is 2-2. Tommy has beaten Alcaraz twice, back-to-back years in Canada. And I actually don't have this up, so let me give you the Alcaraz wins. Alcaraz beat Tommy in Miami last year, and he beat him in Cincinnati last year as well. So Alcaraz actually came back and beat Tommy Paul in another highly competitive match. I remember this was 2 tiebreak sets and a 6-3 in the third by Alcaraz in Cincinnati, and that was a week after the Canada match. So there is a lot of history, 3 out of the 4 matches that suggest that Paul has the goods to really take it to Alcaraz. I think Tommy's key here is going to be to do a little bit of what Tiafoe and Humbert did to Alcaraz. You need to be out for blood on return of serve against Carlitos. You have to see red. You got to look at that as your opportunity to hurt Carlitos right away. Be out for blood on the return of serve. And the reason I say that, and the reason I'm so convinced that you have to do that against Alcaraz, is just look at his losses this year. Look at the common theme. That's what Jarry did in Buenos Aires. That's what Dimitrov did in Miami. Best returning performance I've ever seen in Dimitrov's career. That's what Rublev did in Madrid. And that's what led to really good, respectable efforts against Alcaraz by Tiafoe and against Humbert here at Wimbledon. Now, the other factors, the other thing that Tommy does that has definitely been key against Alcaraz is the net rushing, the athletic net rushing that just takes away Alcaraz's ability to turn defense into offense on a regular basis. He has that backhand cross-court approach that I think forces Alcaraz into a tough spot because he doesn't have the best backhand down the line, redirecting passing shot always. It's a little bit easier for him to take that backhand pass, short angle cross court, and that's something that Tiafoe was able to take advantage of. But in general, the net rushing for Tommy, it helps him have more success when he's attacking Alcaraz, and he's also had great forehand days in his 2 wins over Alcaraz. The Alcaraz key, in my opinion, is going to be to make this match about ball striking. The more this becomes about movement, and the more Tommy Paul is at the net, that's where Alcaraz can get himself into a real dogfight here. I think Carlitos should be building points deep through the middle, create opportunities with depth, and attack from there. The more Alcaraz is opening up angles in the court, I think the more you're helping Tommy. You're giving him angles to work with. You're making the points athletic. He wants short balls to come in on. And when you're playing up the middle, I think you're a little bit less likely, if you're Alcaraz, to surrender those short balls. You're less exposed defensively. And Tommy is happy to play on the run. He's happy to play these east, west, north, south, like very athletic points. So I think Alcaraz needs to muck this up and play I know it's hard for him, play some more boring ground stroke rallies where they're kind of trading through the middle. That's where I think Alcaraz can kind of overpower Tommy, because off the ground, he's bigger off of both wings. He's much bigger off of both wings. And that's the advantage that Alcaraz needs to try to look for. I also think he should break up the backhand rally with the backhand slice. He should try to look to play forehand to forehand with Tommy. The question is, for this matchup, do the Canada matches elevate your belief in Tommy Paul? Do the Canada matches, is that enough to say you think Tommy Paul can pull off this upset? And for me, I'm not quite there, and here's why. One, I think Alcaraz is elevated at slams. It's another level, and he's proven that in his career. In particular, I think they go to the drawing board here, and I think they come out with a much more tactical performance. They have tape. They see how Tommy has bothered Alcaraz in not just the last 2, but the last 3 times they've played. And I think we're going to see a more thoughtful Carlos Alcaraz who changes things up and plays a thinker's match. And I think he'll find some things that work. And I think when they play in Canada, it's more just they're playing. I don't think there's going to be as much tactics that go into it in that kind of setting. The other thing is Tommy has really surprised me both times they've played on the forehand side. So at that point, it just becomes a matter of Is he going to do it again? Because to me, the performances that Paul pulled off there were A plus Tommy Paul performances. I don't think it's a given that he's at that level again, even though I love the ball that Tommy Paul's been playing. I was really comfortable picking him to this quarterfinal before the tournament, and he's hot, and I think he's, going to bring a ton of quality, and I think this match, in terms of how many entertaining points are going to be played, I think this match is going to be the best. That said, I got Alcaraz in 4. Now let's wrap up with Medvedev versus Sinner. Medvedev's path has been Kovacevic, Muller, Struff, and a very unfortunate retirement against Grigor Dimitrov. That was the 4th round match that I was probably looking forward to the most. And the injury bug, unfortunately, caught Grigor, which has happened way too often. But the crazy thing is, I saw a stat, it was tweeted out by Ravi Uba. Dimitrov has 10 retirements in his career, 4 at Wimbledon. It's like, are you kidding me? I remember 2021, he was healthy most of the year, and he wasn't healthy at any of the 4 slams. It's so cruel with Dimitrov. The injuries tend to be at terrible times. All in all, though, I do have some thoughts on Medvedev's run that I want to share here. I was concerned after the Muller match because he wasn't generating offense in that match. He was a little bit of a passenger in that match, and he had to rely on pretty much grinding Muller down, using his physicality advantage and his consistency advantage. And then he played Struff, which is a very unique matchup, at least a very different matchup, where Struff's net rushing style and below average movement from the baseline is going to really test a different set of skills for Medvedev. Daniil isn't asked to create anything from the baseline against Struff, and if he is asked, he can do it because Struff doesn't move that well. But that matchup comes down to making low returns and then hitting passing shots or lobs, which Medvedev was able to come up with at a really impressive rate. Dimitrov would have asked some different questions, but we didn't get to see that match play out. And in fact, Dimitrov was up a break. Maybe it was back on serve at the time of the fall, at the time of the injury. It was really more of a slip than a fall. But I can't really quite remember. But the point is, the Muller match concerned me, and nothing after the Muller match has made me think, oh, okay, it's fine. He showed that he turned a corner. So I just want to say that. Sinner, his path, Hanfmann, Berrettini, Kecmanovic, Shelton. Now, Jannik was a little bit off in his first 2 matches. He didn't quite look himself, but to not look yourself and to still survive a guy as dangerous as Matteo Berrettini in the second round, and to do it in 4 sets, never really be in a precarious position in that match, that's impressive in itself. And then since then, he's found his game, and he hasn't dropped a set in wins over Kecmanovic and Ben Shelton. Head-to-head, 6-5 Medvedev, and this has been a fascinating one to watch. Medvedev won the first 6. Sinner has won the last 5. There have been key improvements in Sinner's variety, his fitness, and his consistency, and those are the things, particularly at the end of last year, that really came into focus against Medvedev. At times, using a very advanced set of offensive skills to overcome the defenses of Medvedev, and also at times kind of beating Daniil in his own game, out-fitnessing Daniil, out-grinding Daniil from the back of the court, as much as you'd think you'd never see that from Jannik Sinner. And this year we've seen something a little bit different. Oh, actually, before I say that, it wasn't just the improvements in Sinner's game. He also played better tactics against Medvedev starting in Beijing. More wide serves, more backhands down the line to break up that cross-court backhand and backhand rally. And those were the 2 major things that Sinner changed. Besides also more drop shots, mixing in serve and volley. So those are the tactical changes. Now, recently, when Medvedev lost 3 matches to Sinner at the end of last year, he, of course, wanted to change some stuff. At the Australian Open, he comes out, hyper-aggressive style. It works for 2 sets. Sinner comes back, wins in 5. In Miami, Medvedev plays the same way. He is really trying to redline the forehand aggression. He is trying to come forward more. He is returning from closer in. All of these things. The interesting thing is, in Melbourne, Medvedev didn't have much of a choice. He came into that final without full capacity in his legs, so he had to switch up his style, and he executed it extremely well for a large period of time. Now, come Miami, Medvedev did have a choice. Medvedev didn't have to play that well. He chose to play like that, and he got shellacked. He got shellacked because he couldn't execute a high level of tennis playing the way he was trying to play. All of the things that Medvedev is good at, he wasn't all that good at in this match in Miami. He upped the forehand aggression, as I said. That led to an erratic forehand performance. He tried to use a close return position. Well, Sinner dominated with body serves and got way more free points than he ordinarily would against Daniil Medvedev, who's usually so good at limiting the free points. Medvedev came forward more. He was 5 for 11 at net in that match because his volleys, they're not all that great, especially when he has to make a difficult one. So you have Medvedev changing his game because of Sinner and then experiencing all the negative trade-offs that come with changing your game. So my recommendation after the Miami match was for Medvedev in the next meeting against Sinner to find a better balance. Don't lose the things that make you good as a tennis player in the first place. Make adjustments. Account for your opponent. But those adjustments can't be so extreme that you lose your identity. So just be more subtle. That was my recommendation for Medvedev. What complicates this is now they're playing on grass. And it's going to factor into Medvedev's decision of how should I play this? Does he play like he did in Miami and Australia? And he isn't using his strengths as a player? Does he play solid like he usually does? I think if he does that, his defense is too vulnerable against Sinner varied weapons on a surface that rewards attack. Sinner, meanwhile, can play within himself and still be offensively potent because it's grass. I actually think we're going to see a performance from Sinner that looked a lot like the Beijing performance. I think we're going to see Jannik come forward a ton. +1 approach shots into the open court. So wide serve, +1 open court come in. I think we'll see a lot of that. I think we'll see some serve and volley. I think we'll see forehand drop shot. I think we'll see maybe some backhand slice from Sinner. He can sometimes whip it out. And if you're going to do it, as Alexander Muller learned against Medvedev, it's a good idea against Daniil on grass. So I think we're going to see the kind of variety version, the variety and the offensive version of Sinner come out to play. What version of Medvedev are we going to see? The balance that I'm asking for, he hasn't shown me that against Sinner, and he hasn't even shown me that at Wimbledon, where he's playing high percentage tennis from the back of the court that's also imposing. So I think in order for Daniil to win, he's going to need his best serving performance since the Australian Open. His shoulder has been getting better, but this will really show us where he's at. It's his only chance in this match is to outserve Sinner. Other than that, I think Sinner can just keep doing what he's been doing. Avoid the backhand rally, serve body if Medvedev is standing in, serve wide if he's standing back, come forward as much as possible. I see a way easier path for Jannik Sinner. And you know what? I'm going to go bold here, and I'm going to say Jannik Sinner in 3. That'll do it for this one. Excited for coverage coming down the pipe after these quarterfinals. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.